So no foreigner must feel scared or threatened by us walking. They must just respect us and respect the call that we are saying they must go back to their countries by 30 June this year. Every foreigner in South Africa. It is a deadline.
You say every foreigner,
even
those who are legally in South Africa.
We know that Home Affairs have been generating these documents that are deemed illegal right now. They've been generating them in their houses. We've got evidence. It's right there. The SIU have published that. So we are saying, let everybody go out. Let us, as South African, sort out our borders. Maybe give us 6 months. Sort out our borders, correct the systems, and then everybody can come out. Everyone is welcome. Sorry, everyone can come in. But let us correct the system. Let us help the government. The government doesn't have a risk.
Wow! When you listen to the leaders of the March and March movement, the message sounds very simple, yet confusing. They claim they are not xenophobic. They say they only want undocumented people to leave by the June 30th deadline. But then 2 videos appeared. Take a listen to how they engage this shop owner.
Where are they now?
Focus on it.
No, bro. Yeah. This is the last time I'm telling you. What? They mustn't put anything. I told this guy. No. Even last year in October, we came here. I thought same guy.
As you can see, in this video, that foreign shop owner, visibly a non-African immigrant, is approached calmly. The conversation is firm, but not threatening. The issue is not that he is foreign. The issue is that goods are being placed outside the shop. They tell him not to do it again. They compare him to ShopRite. They say this is the last time. But nobody tells him to leave South Africa by June 30th. Nobody says his documents do not matter. Nobody says he must close his shop because foreigners must not run businesses. Then another video appears. Take a listen.
You need to leave the country by the 30th. What's your take on that? When are you leaving?
I'm a law-abiding citizen.
Yeah.
I have all the necessary documents it takes to. I have run my business, paid tax for 13 years now. So I have the legal documents. I'm looking for the direction for the government. If the government insists that I should close my shop and go,
yeah,
it's coming from the government direction. I will close and go.
So you are ignoring this organization?
I'm not ignoring the organization, but at the end of the day, the organization stated that they are chasing illegal immigrants. I'm not illegal. I've run a business. I have this company for more than 13 years. Paying tax, paying taxes, employing workers, training workers by myself. How am I doing something illegal at that perspective? Yeah. Is that illegal?
Not.
This time, the shop owner is African. He has legal documents, been running the business for 13 years, pays tax, employs South Africans, and has trained many. He even says that if government tells him to close, he will obey the government. And what is the answer? Listen to what they say after he speaks.
Over the years, for more than 13 years, it's a hard work to train good workers. They are here, a number of them. If I close and go, what about their fate? I told them several times, can you manage the shop? They said, no, the rent is expensive. Okay, calm down for me. I'm not going. I'm not leaving you guys behind. As long as I get somebody who is capable to manage this shop as South African, I will go. I'm ready to go.
In short,
you understand, boss. So what I'm saying is that you as a prospective assignment, get me somebody who is capable.
No.
To manage the shop.
Let me explain something to you.
All right, bro.
Okay. What we say, we don't want any foreigner to run any business.
Mm-hmm.
So if you close now, it's none of your business whether this shop is opening or not. It's none of your business.
What about those South Africans who are working here?
Who have the right? It's not your consent. It's not. No. It's not his consent.
It's not his consent.
Who is he?
We don't care. That is the moment this debate changes. Because if the issue is illegal immigration, then documents should matter. If the issue is protecting South Africans, then South African workers should matter. If the issue is law and order, then government authority should matter. But in that second video, none of that seems to matter. So now, we have to ask a harder question. Are these groups really after illegal immigrants? Are they after all foreigners? Or are they mostly after African foreigners? Now, before anyone twists this argument, let us be clear. South Africa has a real immigration problem. Border control matters, documentation matters, national security matters, labour protection matters. Communities have a right to raise concerns when the state fails to manage migration properly. But there is a difference between immigration enforcement and street power. There is a difference between asking government to enforce the law and deciding, as a group on the street, that you now have the authority to close people's shops, question their right to exist, and set your own deadline for who must leave. That is where this becomes dangerous. Let's watch this footage.
I parked my car here and I told him, bro, we don't need you to keep your things here. Because it's not supposed to be. Have you been at ShopRite? Have you ever gone to ShopRite? ShopRite are doing the same thing as you guys. Have you ever seen them putting things outside? Then why are you guys doing it?
No, no. Then they will not see next time.
Yeah, right up. Okay, this is the last time I want to
We're going to see this next time.
Okay, sir. All right.
In this footage, as opposed to the other, the issue is visibly about business conduct only. Goods outside the shop, compliance, shop behaviour. The tone is corrective. The man is advised to fix the problem and continue operating. But in the second video, the African shop owner is not treated as someone who can correct anything.
No.
To manage the shop.
Let me explain something to you.
All right, good.
Okay. What we say, we don't want any foreigner to run any business. So if you close now, it's none of your business whether this shop is opening or not. It's none of your business.
What about those South Africans who are working here?
Who has the right? It's not your concern. It's not. No. It's not his concern. Who is he? Who is he? It's not your concern.
He explains. They dismiss him. He mentions documents. They say they do not care. He mentions tax. It does not matter. He mentions South African workers. It does not matter. He says he is waiting for government direction. That also does not matter. Then comes the most revealing line. We don't want any foreigner to run any business here. Now hold on. If that is the position, then this is no longer only about illegal immigration. Because the man is not being told, show us your permit. He is not being told, if you are undocumented, you must regularize your status. He is not being told, the authorities will verify your papers. He is being told that even if he is documented, even if he pays tax, even if he employs South Africans, even if he has operated for more than a decade, he still must close. So what exactly is being enforced? The law or exclusion? And this is where the African question becomes unavoidable. Why does the language become harsher when the shop owner is African? Why does the patience disappear? Why does illegal immigration suddenly become, we don't want any foreigner to run any business? Why does a man who says he employs South Africans become the criminal here before any legal process has taken place? This is not a small detail. It is the whole story. Because when people say they are fighting illegal immigration, the public may understand that as a call for lawful enforcement. But when the action on the ground dismisses legal documents, dismisses tax compliance, dismisses South African jobs, and dismisses government authority, then the phrase illegal immigrant starts doing another kind of work. It becomes a label. And once that label is placed on someone, nothing they say can remove it. That is the danger. The African shop owner in the second video tries almost every argument that people usually demand from immigrants. He is law-abiding, has documents, pays tax, has created jobs. South Africans he trained work inside the business. He is ready to obey government instruction. But the answer remains the same. Close, leave, not you. We don't care. And that tells us something very uncomfortable. For some people, the problem is not only whether an African immigrant is legal or illegal. The problem is that he is visible. He owns a shop. He employs people. He speaks back. He has survived for 13 years. He has become part of the local economy. And that is what makes him a target. This is why the Protect South Africans argument also needs to be tested carefully. Listen to this.
They are chasing illegal immigrants. I'm not illegal. I've run a business. I have this company for more than 13 years. Paying tax, paying taxes, employing workers, training workers by myself. How am I doing something illegal at that perspective?
Yeah.
Is that illegal?
Not at all.
So that's what I have my confidence. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
What I'm telling them, I'm ready to go close. Even today, what I'm begging you guys is, get me a South African who is capable to manage this shop. I have 30-something workers here, South Africans, who, if you close this shop, they will be displaced. I want to make sure that while I'm going, they're in good hands. Give me money for my socks and everything. I will leave the shop for you. I'm even tired of all this harassment there and there. Everyone is tired. So I'm not arguing to go. My own problem is that I have trained workers over the years, for more than 13 years. It's a hard work to train good workers. They are here, a number of them. If I close and go, what about their fate? I told them several times, can you mind?
Because South Africans work in his shop. Many have been trained there. If the shop closes, those workers will lose their income. And the answer he gets is basically that is not your concern. But wait. If the movement is really about South African livelihoods, how can South African workers suddenly become irrelevant? If closing the shop harms South African employees, then who is being protected? This is where populist politics often becomes very cruel. It speaks in the name of the people. But when real people appear, workers, families, shop assistants, tenants, customers, the movement can sacrifice them for the performance of power. Because the point is no longer solving the problem. The point is showing who has control. And that is why June 30th matters. A date that is not an official government deportation deadline has become a fear point. It has become a street deadline, a political countdown, a way of telling certain people that the law is no longer the only thing they must fear. They must also fear the crowd. And once that happens, South Africa faces a much bigger question than immigration. Who governs? The state, through law, or street movements through pressure? Because today, the target may be African shop owners. Tomorrow it can be informal traders, then political opponents, then poor South Africans without the right paper at the right moment. Then anyone the crowd decides does not belong. That is how rule of law collapses. Not always with one dramatic announcement. Sometimes it collapses when people start accepting that a group can walk into a business and declare a person illegal, unwanted, criminal, and removable without a court, without an official order, and without a lawful process. So the real question is not whether South Africa should have immigration laws. Of course it should. The real question is whether immigration law is being used as a shield for something else. Because if a non-African foreign shop owner can be corrected calmly, but an African shop owner with documents, taxes, workers, and years of business is told, "We don't care," then South Africans must ask themselves what is really happening. Is this law enforcement? Is this economic frustration? Is this xenophobia? Is this Afrophobia? Or is it a dangerous mixture of all of them? And maybe the hardest truth is this. A country can have legitimate immigration concerns and still treat African migrants unfairly. Both things can be true. The state can fail its citizens at the border, in jobs, in housing, and in local services. But that failure does not give street movements the right to turn African migrants into public targets. Because once legality stops depending on law and starts depending on who the crowd chooses to humiliate, nobody is truly safe. So when they say illegal immigrants, listen carefully, ask who they mean, ask who they confront, ask who they spare, ask whose documents they ignore, ask whose taxes do not matter, ask whose South African workers suddenly become invisible. Because sometimes the truth is not in the slogan, sometimes the truth is in the difference between two encounters. One foreign shop owner is corrected, another is condemned, and that difference may tell us more about South Africa's migration crisis than any speech, march, or deadline ever could. If this video made you think differently, like it, share it, and subscribe to the South Africa File. And tell me in the comments, is this really about illegal immigration, Or is South Africa facing a deeper crisis over African migrants, street power, and the rule of law?